Welcome back, everybody. We now have a very exciting panel on inspiring change, the role of media and film in advancing solutions for our planet, ably moderated by our moderator, Hayden Turner, a presenter at National Geographic, who, as we discovered yesterday, has something of a fan club in Indonesia. Hayden.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Charles. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon on the second day of this fantastic summit. I'm surrounded here by people that have incredible experience in media, and it's a pleasure to be here to be able to share some ideas and some future solutions with you. And we really would like to keep it very relaxed and very organic today, and open the floor towards the end with some questions from you would be fantastic. So, inspiring change, the role of the media and film in advancing solutions for our planet. Where do we start? Is the first thing. There's so many different types of media around these days, and things that are in our face constantly, and I think everyone on the panel here will have some wonderful things to say at that. Please let me just introduce the panel to you. On my left is Wimar, the former presidential spokesman. He's a PR consultant with Intermatrix Communications and a well-known media personality. To my right, Graham Hill, founder of treehugger.com, the leading media outlet for making sustainability mainstream, and is VP of Interactive Media Planet Green. To the right, Nadia Hutagulung, who most people would know, and I sat with yesterday on a great panel. She's a regional TV personality and wonderful person, environmentalist, founder of greenkampong.com, which is another fantastic website. And last but not least, I certainly say that Matthew Godfrey is the president of Y&R Asia and was the CEO and COO of Publicis Asia, and he's going to be able to give us some wonderful insight into his arena as well. So I might just start off by letting the panelists introduce themselves a bit more and give us a bit more of their feelings about the role of the media and film in the future and how it can apply to solutions for saving and protecting our planet. Wimar, can I start off with you?
Thank you very much, Hayden. It's a great privilege to be sitting here with all of you respected experts. I am not an expert. I am sometimes respected, but mostly I am around. So I will not introduce myself here in Jakarta. It would be difficult to filter out. I would rather go to the points that I have for these 5 minutes, and probably will not use that much because I have assembled these points and typically on my BlackBerry. First of all, Indonesia is not only a model for climate change to be attacked like in Kalimantan, but it's also a model for media development. They say Indonesia now has a free media, but it is only free in certain ways. We will discuss that if any questions should arise. So the media is as much in trouble as is the environment. Number two, media here is free of state control, but it is not free from the control of money and power. And in some people, the money and power is in the same hands. Local people will know who I mean, but I will refrain from such rudeness in this forum, unless I'm asked. Thirdly, climate change is an intensely political issue. People in the street don't see it, as an environment issue. It's just, are you for or against the government? Are you for and against SBY? And because the government is a coalition government, at lunch today, I witnessed a cabinet minister who said you should not look at red as an objective. It's just a tool, and before you say anything, think of the thousands of people who would lose their jobs if the moratorium is indeed implemented. And that is just a few hours, or was it yesterday? Anyway, within a short space of time that the president gave his excellent speech. In fact, the speech is excellent, but it's not regarded as such in Indonesia because the delivery needs a Mr. Kuntoro or somebody to struggle through. It is not being delivered. Okay, the next. Global support, I see, is very important in media development. We appreciate the global support, but we need more than support for technical matters, financial, legal framework, long-term planning. We need international support for the media. And lest people think I'm asking for money. No, it's not money we need, but it's access to the channels. Nobody has access to Indonesian media channels except people who are working for media owned by the big commercial and political interest. The international media is much better, but people don't watch it unless you have Real Madrid against Barcelona. That's the truth of today. So, since I have to use my time well, I have to speak the truth. And if there is... Thank you. Thank you. If there is a way that the conscience of the world can be translated into the awareness of the Indonesian people, then you should see how the media is doing, and you should work with NGOs, government who are in Indonesia, who can testify just how biased the government is, the media is, in favor of the status quo. So our struggle in media is very hard. Before we need to convince people on the street, we have to convince the Minister of Agriculture that climate change is not a manufactured issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll get you to hold on to that, just because your mic's playing up a little bit. Nadia, I'm going to jump across and... Sorry, you were all ready then, weren't you?
Oh, no, that's okay. Do you want to give her the microphone, though?
I think
We seem to be not having much luck with these.
I think Nadia's is working. I think it's
Okay.
just sometimes when you sit
You told me to keep my microphone.
Okay, hi, I'm Nadia Hutagalung, and some of you might be familiar with who I am. I've been in front of the camera for 25 years now, and it was when I moved to being in front of one of these cameras that captured voice, also I realized that I had the power of my own voice as well. Now, being one of the pioneering hosts on one of Asia's most popular music channels, that was streamed into millions of homes across Asia, it gave me the platform to speak about these causes that really meant so much to me. Now, my family hails from Sumatra. That's why my last name is Hutagalung. I'm Batak, and my mom is Australian. And in the 70s, she was in Indonesia, and she happened to rescue 2 orangutan that had been stolen from the zoo in Bandung. She'd caught wind of this, and she said, okay, I need to try and help these orangutan out. So she traveled from Bandung to Kalimantan, a Dutch woman who had one of the first reserves there, and she brought them back for those orangutan to be rehabilitated. So orangutans, their habitat and environment were very, very close to my heart, and that's where my passion started. Aside from all of the other things that my mom has done, she's my greatest inspiration. Now, in the years since, I have been nominated for and won Asian Television Awards. But what was truly rewarding for me was when one of my colleagues approached me on set one day and said, you know, Nat, my cousin gave away half of his life savings to the orangutan because of you. And that to me meant more than winning an award for a trivial music program. And we're talking about media today, and I have to say that this music channel is highly responsible these days. Oh, they censored me. Yeah. What I was saying is that this music channel is highly responsible with the type of programming that they're creating these days. Now, I realized the power that I had as a mere individual to affect the minds of hundreds of thousands of individuals. And so there began my journey of continuing to speak about causes that meant a lot to me. And I used that platform. It's a music channel, but I was talking about, it's the International Year of the Ocean. And this is in the mid-90s, you know. Everyone's like, what is she talking about, right? And I was talking about, you know, all kinds of things related to the environment. And it generated a result that you could, a noticeable result, because a lot of the requests that were being sent in all had messages about the environment, and that was great for me. It meant that what I was talking about was actually falling on ears that kids were listening. listening to this. Now, a few years ago, my husband and I started to build one of the first eco homes in Singapore, and we decided that we had to share our experiences and the resources that we were finding through this process, and so we started a website called greenkampung.com, which was basically just to share the information, the trials and tribulations of building a green home in Singapore, and it has quickly grown into what it is today, and we cover everything from food to design and business, and it's not a treehugger.com, which we aspire to be, but it is my small effort to be able to share the information that I come across in my daily life. Now, we're currently creating new television and online programs that will focus on simple, actionable, doable actions that are applicable to all walks of life, and I think this is the key. Now, I believe that everyone has the power in their hands to pass on information that they've gathered with the power of technology that we have today. You just need a phone, and you need internet connection, and everybody can be a broadcaster, or a publisher of content, or an aggregator, which is what Green Kampung does. We pass on the good stuff that we find to an audience that may not already have access to this kind of information. So we no longer really need to wait for the TV networks to produce this content, because unfortunately sometimes they're just not that hooked onto it. So that's the change that we want to see. Mediums like the internet are giving us the power to lead by example as individuals.
Yeah.
No, go for it.
Is this working? No, it's not, mate. Not very well. Sorry.
Is this working?
That's working.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm humbled to be here. I feel almost least qualified to be on the stage with this panel. I often think that the media and part of the business I do is part of the problem. I've been looking at the conversations that I have being in the advertising industry across Asia Pacific, and in 2006, 2007, there seemed to be a real momentum for having conversations about, as a brand, standing for sustainability, as a brand taking on some of these big issues, and many of our clients were very concerned about it. And then we had a slight crisis around the world, and a lot of money disappeared out of the system. And coming out of that, in the last year, all I see from the advertising and the media industry is conspicuous consumption. The biggest advertisers are banks, real estate companies, automobiles. And all that good momentum we had in 2006, 2007, we forgot about. We're telling you to spend on credit cards faster, more, at 29.99% interest, when the cost of money is only 1%. We're telling you that you need a new plasma 3D screen TV. And we know that 80% of the world's problems are caused by 20% of the people. And my industry is fueling that because we're all worried about growth, because we lost it in 2009, 2010. So we're hungry, we're getting back, and we forgot the good principles we started to discover in 2006, 2007. But the good news is, when I come to a conference like this, I start hearing stories of progress. And maybe in 2007, I felt that the conversation and the movement was ahead of business. The movement was ahead of governments. And that the passion that people like Al Gore had to speak for change was ahead of where the world was. I now think that there are signs that the business community, the government communities are starting to get some momentum back. But it's now my industry, the film, media, music industry, that is now lagging behind and back to our old habits. And I think it's a good time for us to change. And I think we need to drive much more accountability. And Wimar mentioned money, and he's right. Across Asia Pacific, the TV stations, the radio stations, the newspapers, and these influential media, they look for money, so they go where crises are. They go where the stories are. And there's a small story with MediaCorp in Singapore a few weeks ago. They got into a bit of trouble because after the tsunami in Japan and there was this crisis and devastation, and they sent out an email to somebody, to the whole industry, saying, this is a good time to buy TV now. Ratings are up.
Ad slots.
Ad slots.
Ad slots.
And this is how they think. They think, wow, here's a crisis, I'll get ratings, this is what I should buy. And they don't see the crisis in the environment. And that's why we need platforms like Treehugger to push the message into a place, into a space where people can grab it. But I don't think the mainstream media can be so lax in their attitude. And I think in terms of money, if you think about how much money the advertising industry gives to these people, I mean, the company I represent probably has about $50 billion worth of billings around Asia Pacific. It's a fair bit of cash. What happens if we said to the media channels, we're not going to support you with our brands unless you had a certain amount of content that was geared towards the right messaging. We're not going to support your brand if you're going to continue to put wrong content out. What happens if we had some way to measure how much content came into the right spaces, the right messages? I read for the papers this last week, I read the New York Times, I read the Washington Post, I read the Straits Times and the Jakarta Post, the Globe over the last week. And there was probably 1% to 2% of all articles were dedicated towards a crisis as large as this. 99% of the communication was, what does some soccer player say? What wedding is on today? But the real issues, the big issues, skated over. So I think it's the job of the media industry now to catch up to business, to catch up to governments, and to start putting some accountability back into the content that goes out there. So all the responsibility for changing opinions of the world is not put on the shoulders of Graham and Treehugger. More needs to be done. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we've gone handheld now, mate. We're back onto the handheld.
Yeah, I'm just going to shut it off because I think it was doing a bit of an echo. How's that? Does that sound good? So I'm Graham Hill. I'm the founder of a site, treehugger.com. And for those of you who haven't been there, it's basically a big green news site. So we started about 7 years ago. We have around 60,000 articles, so it's a really big resource. And we cover architecture, transportation, fashion, product design, and a ton of environmental news. We write about 50 articles a day, so we're very prolific. And it's very pro-business and very positive. And the idea is we're trying to help push green into the mainstream. And I don't think we can claim that we've done it all ourselves, but it has seemingly come along in the last 7 years. So it's been great. We sort of caught really good timing, and we've been part of this big surge into green. It's part of Discovery, and we get in the range of 5 to 6 million people a month for around 12, 15 million page views. So it's one of the most trafficked websites, and please check it out. And it's got a great newsletter. So think about joining that. So I have a bunch of notes here that I want to share with you. They're mostly targeted about media and the creation of media, but I believe that is also applicable to many of your organizations just in terms of overall method of communicating. So my proposal is simply that we need to not only talk the talk, but we need to walk the walk if we're going to be powerful in media. So I want to talk about talking the talk, and I want to talk about walking the walk. So first of all, in terms of the talk, got 6 main points. The first is that we need to go for depth. So this doesn't always work. Often, a lot of media these days is very shallow, and that's part of the business model. But I want to suggest that we need depth. And so if you have the latitude to really go deep on some stories, that's absolutely what's needed. So if you can dig in and add some real value versus just passing stuff on, that's a great thing to do, as much of that as you can. And we're able to do some of it, but we certainly do pass stuff on. So go for depth. Secondly, you want to think like a product designer. You want to try to look at media and the media that you create in terms of usability. You want to make it usable. So how can you help your audience make decisions? What are the key questions they're going to have? How can you help them get the right amount of information so they can make decisions, and most importantly, actually move to taking action? Because we need a lot more action. There are a lot of people out there being inspired and educated, but we've got an execution problem. We need people to actually do these things versus just talk about them. So you want to think about usability. Thirdly, on the sort of in the realm of teach a man or a woman to fish, you want to try to teach your audience how to think for themselves. Teach them the general concepts and the approach such that they can take that going forward, so that they can develop the internal tools so that they can look at products and services and really gauge for themselves, do the back of the napkin calculations, and really sort of get a grip for how they should view things. So you want to teach them to think for themselves. So things like life cycle analysis, or the scale of things. Like, we have a big scale problem. Of all the green things that you can do in your life, often people view them on all the same levels. Well, recycling, while it really is sort of core to green, that's what people think about when they think about green, compared to doing something like buying renewable energy for your home or your office, recycling's small. Buying renewable energy is really big. And so understanding scale so that you can focus on the things that really make an impact is important. So we want to teach people how to think for themselves, understand the larger concepts. We also want to get people to start. There's a lot of information out there, and it's easy to get paralyzed. And what I like to say is we should push people to just get started. You're going to make some mistakes, you're going to go down some wrong roads, you're going to do some things that you, in retrospect, shouldn't have. The important thing is to get going and not get paralyzed. So get people to start. Two more things. One, you want to get the mix right. So I believe that we need a combination of inspired by fear and inspired by hope. We need a little bit of inspired by fear. Inspired by fear is inconvenient truth, right? The vast majority of that is inspired by fear. But we also need inspired by hope, and I think most of it should be that. So getting that mix right is really critical. You want to get people to understand the why and then the how. And finally, and this is important, you want to be real. I think that Tree Hugger has had a lot of success in that it's very authentic. And if you want to connect with people, if you want to resonate with people, you have to come from a real place. And once you do that, then people can connect. If you're trying to pretend that you're someone that you're not, if you're overly formal, it's much harder to connect. And so if you really want to have impactful media, you really want to think about how to be real. And that brings me to the walk it section. And really, it's sort of playing on that. So I talked to you about talking it, now we're talking about walking it. So I believe that if you really want to make a difference, you need to be the change. And Gandhi said it, and he meant it, and he did it. And you could see what happened there. So the greenies in general do too much talking and not enough walking. And so you need to live it, you need to be it, you need to experience things on a really visceral level so that you can really tell a story, so that you can connect, so that you can resonate with people. So basically, it's much easier to sell something that you really care about and that you really understand than something that you've just sort of read about, something that's conceptual. So just a couple examples in my personal life, and I'm trying to really spend time on greening my life down to the last little bit. I have a folding bike. It's a Strida. And so I could have read an article and then I could talk about it, but having owned one and used it, I get it on a visceral level. I can talk about it passionately. I really understand it. And that makes media that much more powerful. So basically what I want to say is that if you're in this space and you want to affect change, you absolutely have to think about how you talk it, so that approach. But you can be way more powerful if you actually walk it. And so taking that time for you and your staff to really start living this is really important.
That's great.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think you've given me a great segue there, Graham, just to go into something that as moderator, I'm going to try and be a chemical here that stimulates some discussion. And to put a little bit into the mix, I'm a young family father in a community that doesn't have a lot of cash, and I have decided to go to the supermarket, and I have the choice between certain eggs to buy, and I'm always going to go for the cheapest because that's in my budget. My question to all of you is, how do we get that trigger in the brain of, like, everyone in this room is converted. Majority of these people, I would say everyone here is converted. We know what we want to do, we know where we want to go, we know what we want to try and do, and listening to these wonderful people gives us those ideas. But in the media, how do we tip that or trigger that synapse? How do we get into someone's brain in a way that they don't flick over to Friends, they don't change the channel, they don't stop listening, they don't go, oh, here we go again, we've heard it so much. What is the point there, and how do we actually go for that? Where do we go for that? How would you do it? Wimar, or anyone?
Oh, I could not give you a cookbook recipe, but I would venture that to start with, you have to know where you are working, because the concepts that we have heard in communications are very good, very valid, but could get in trouble at the point of delivery when your audience is not as conversant, not only with the idioms, but even with the language. Today I overheard a conversation where people were discussing about a meeting with 100 young people who were very bright, but when it came to talk, they could not express themselves, although they could speak English well. Well, I would caution people that if you see somebody who speaks English well, it doesn't mean that that person thinks in English or has an English Anglo-Saxon type of courage, or that he's as versatile in the language as the communicators are. I studied English as a child in Europe for 4 years. I studied in the States, went to school, graduate school, 6 years. I became an international consultant. I became a presidential spokesman. I met with 60 statesmen, but still, if I have to speak English, I get butterflies in my stomach, which I don't get if I speak in Indonesian. It comes naturally. So if you do not communicate in a way that is comfortable for the audience, then you have to think about getting some local sensitivities. Walking the walk, not just in terms of the discipline, but in terms of the locality. Walking the walk in Sumatra is different from walking the walk in West Java. Okay, the other big point is, I assume that much of the global environment community works with governments. You have the Norwegian governments, you have the UNDP, you have the English, German government, and they work with the Indonesian governments. The Indonesian government is very well represented in this international forum. I know people close to me who go through one conference in Kinshasa, maybe not in Kinshasa, somewhere, in Nairobi, and they go to another conference in Stockholm, going through the year to 5 international conferences. When they are here, they take a rest. And in the meantime that these people are gone, the local politicos, the parliament, you know, they sabotage the president's commitment to the targets of expressed in Pittsburgh and in Boston in 2004. So if you laud the Indonesian government, which they deserve, then you should also help them in enforcing the authority of the government to the local population in terms of communications. Do you know that the president of Indonesia does not have one television channel that is neutral to him? Least of all friendly. They are all hostile to him. They threw out the best finance minister in the world through slander and cabal, and the president could not resist. So it's not the politicians that get blamed, it's the president who gets blamed for not standing up firmly. So if he stands up for climate change and his minister speaks against it and he doesn't fire the minister, we have a serious problem. So how do we help that? Getting people to communicate, people with blogs, people on social networks, people with citizen journalism, citizen TV. You could help them get a voice. Otherwise, it will just be 2 steps forward and, well, maybe 3 steps forward and 1 step backward. There's no doubt that I am very happy about the development that the efforts have come to, but I'm just so ashamed of my government and my people for not living up to your expectations. Thank you.
Thank you, Wimar. If I can go a little bit deeper, I've always wanted to know where that trigger point is in someone's head that makes them think outside that square. I'm not going to buy those eggs.
I have some comments on that.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
So I think two main points that I would make. One, is this better? One, there we go. One is that social norms are very important, right? We're all up here and we're very conscious that we are not wearing shorts or have a stain on our shirt. People care about what other people think of them. So social norms are very, very powerful. And the media helps create social norms and really determines those and helps inform those over time. And so an example of ones that, at least in North America, have changed over the last number of years, the Hummer, those really big, crazy trucks, and what are called McMansions, which are very big houses, those were held in much higher regard, 5 years ago than they are now. So that's an example of social norms. So media really can help slowly push that. So if you were, if in buying the cheaper eggs, if you're walking up to the cash register and the social norm is such that buying the cheaper eggs is not very cool or looked down upon, you might change which eggs you buy. So that's one part. The other is that a big reason that we are here in the first place is because of convenience. So I think fundamentally, I very much included, I think we're generally fairly lazy. And a lot of life is about convenience. So convenience is the real killer. So we have to, businesses, the citizen, the government, we have to work to create systems that just make sense and make it convenient for people to choose the better eggs. And so that might be the right taxes and externalizing costs such that the cheaper eggs are clearly not as good as the more expensive ones. So the other is convenience and basically building the right incentives so that you want to choose the right ones. So those are my two main points.
I agree with what you also said about inspiration. I think we've been doing a lot by fear. And what we're talking about with inspiration is a very, very simple way to change the conversation from you have to do it. And it's a bit like when I was a very young lad at school. They'd teach you about hell, and they'd make you scared about the consequences of doing things wrong, and it didn't stop anybody doing anything. So how do you get people to do the right thing? Comes to inspiration, and usually that comes with great storytelling. And at the moment, when we try to inspire people, we inspire them with facts. Here are the logical reasons why you should not buy those eggs. And I think we have to elevate it to a lifestyle choice. Here is a way you can live, which is appealing, inspirational, noble. And we have to start showcasing that. And if you look at how successful TV programs work, successful media programs work, how did it suddenly become very cool to own a chopper? Well, they didn't tell you how to build an American chopper, they showed you the lifestyle. They inspired you with those stories. And if we could capture some of the stories that I heard today about the sustainable fishing village, if Hayden, you had the green safari tour of the world, where you just brought us the most inspirational story from people living the right way, you could start a conversation about the future and not about the instructions. And I think that would be part of the solution.
Yeah, I think that unsustainable practices, as you've heard, if you've been here throughout the conference, are becoming very unacceptable, as are meaningless, trivial lifestyle reality programs.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I'm with you.
Right.
I don't want to see any more Kardashians.
Oh, hello? Really? Okay, so it is the media's responsibilities to stop buying into this rubbish, because nobody really wants to watch it unless they're trying to zone out. And even then, it's really not worthwhile. Okay? So the media has a really huge responsibility, and I'm just going to be really simple here, because for those of us who attend these conferences, and for those of us who have a slight interest, we need to be the vehicle, the translation service for the average Joe on the street who doesn't understand some of the terminologies that are talked about in these conferences or amongst scientists or amongst greenies, they just don't get it, you know, and it's not their fault, you know. So we need to create interesting lifestyle programs that are educational, that raise awareness, but it needs to be done with caution because nobody wants the word green shoved down their throat. In fact, in the West, green is we don't really like the word so much anymore. Well, not we, but you know, it's not, we're past that, you know. You need to look at the educational systems, you know, you need to look at farming and water and all of the elements and poverty and population control that all contribute to climate change and food, you know, and exactly, inspiring programs. So then we need to create this need for it. The people want this information. Hope, you know? So no more, the goal for me, I think, and the goal for media should be that we don't want to preach to the converted anymore. We want to find ways that are interesting to hook people in through their various interests. And by the way, they learn that these things have great effects on their environment.
Thank you very much, everyone. Very, very interesting views. We're going to open the floor to some questions because I'm sure there's some people with some. It's a very, very interesting topic because I feel we're at the pivotal point in our time that there's so many different areas of social media and traditional media and channels to go down that we can make change. I think that the panelists up here are classic examples of people that have seen it, done it, and walking the walk and talking the talk. Would anyone be interested in asking a question?
Maybe while...
We've got, can we have a microphone down here, please?
I just want to make one comment while they're coming there. I'm going to forget the comment. Oh, yes. I mean, one thing both Nadia and I are doing, we've created media that's really very green focused. And so in a way, we've sort of built this green area and we're trying to get people to come to it. I would say that if you can, a really good approach is actually to bring the green to people to where they already are. You know, so if we could integrate these messages into MTV, into The Simpsons, into The Office, into the popular programs, that's where people already are, and that's the way. Following with what you were saying, green becomes, it's part of the message, but it's not the whole message. Like, people want to watch those shows, and if you can integrate green content, go to where the people are, that can be really effective.
Very wise words. Thank you very much, mate. Sorry, so your question, if you can just direct it at either the panel or a particular person, that would be lovely.
My name is Ian. I actually work for the same company as Matt, but it's not a loaded question, but it is for Matt, which is, how do you drive ratings for this content? What's going to make it attractive? Because ratings are going to bring ad dollars, and then it's obviously going to bring eyeballs.
I mean, I've been fairly disappointed with ratings, so your question seems to be a very TV-led question. Last week I went through the entire TV channel, and there was absolutely no content really focused on this issue. If you wanted to find 24 hours of Discovery Turbo, cars, you could. But if you actually wanted to sit down and engage with this, it was very, very difficult. So I don't think the ratings are there because there's not content airtime space. And I would love to see Discovery Green, 24 hours of this topic broadcast, encouraging people to make content for it. I'd like to see YouTube Green, so places and channels that you can actually go and find these spaces, because the moment there's no ratings because it's scattered in between programs. CNN have a green segment and there's a little green little moment, but there's no content to go for, and therefore there's no ratings. So I think we have to pressure the people who hold the channels to create the space and then feed the content in. Because if you look at a great movie like Home, it's shown, I'm sure many of you have seen it, there's 16 million views around the world. But have you ever seen that broadcast on mainstream TV? And the answer would be probably not. So I think working with the media owners to get the space and the content is probably the first step, because at the moment you won't get ratings because there's nothing to watch. Anybody else want to answer Ian before I ask
I'd
him
just
to leave
like
the
to
company?
say something. Yeah, if it's, I totally agree with you there, Matt. It's in my world of trying to get a documentary out to the right audience. I find that there's certain components in documentary making these days that have to be there, and the broadcasters tell you it has to be there. And the word that's lingering around natural history documentary filmmaking these days is entertainment. Now, I've never heard of entertainment to the point where you have to be entertaining to get people to watch a documentary, but that is the buzzword. And I'm finding now that people in the media, viewers, are so bombarded with so much that they're confused, that the bar is being lifted so high. They want to see the next thing. Pushing the boundaries is the thing that I'm struggling with at the moment. So it's not a matter of going out and showing somebody that there's a beautiful space here and how these people live sustainably or something like that. It's not good enough now. So we are sort of our own evil creatures, what we've created, by taking this bar higher and higher. I totally wanted to just touch back on what Graham said there. I'm finding that we're missing this little Rubik's Cube colour on one side that youngsters, the youth of today, music, pop stars, TV stars, if we could combine those people, and not just on a lip service sort of way, but green Simpsons, green this, without using that word green, I find that we're going to start to integrate it into society a lot more, and it's going to still be entertaining, but there's going to be messages underneath. Sorry, that was just my little thought there.
And just to echo that, I think we need both. It's great that we have places like National Geographic and Discovery does have Planet Green, which is all green. But in terms of integrating, I would bet that, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but there's a show in the U.S. I think it's Will and Grace, and one of the characters is gay, and I would bet that has had more effect for gay rights than if you had a separate gay-focused channel, right? There's something about sort of integrating to where people are. So I bet you that show has had a more positive impact on that front than anything else. So I'm with you.
Any more? Gentleman here.
Hi, my name's Hari, and my question is to Hayden and Graham specifically. You started with an interesting story about a man who lives in a poor neighborhood, goes out, sees 2 sets of egg, one more expensive and one less. And then, interestingly, both of you started climbing the pedestal and doing what everybody in the green community does, wagging the finger at the poor guy, saying how he shouldn't fix his roof and buy the more expensive eggs because it's the right thing to do. Don't you think the role of the media should be to inspire businesses to make the right egg cheaper? So that the decision is common sense. Instead of all of us trying to get on the pedestal and saying, we know what the right thing is and you're all the heathen and let's show you the light. Which generally seems to be, that's why the population is tuning out. Because we'll keep on telling them they're doing the wrong thing, when that's the only thing that's available to them as an option.
I absolutely agree with you, and that was my point exactly. I believe that the majority of the population is the people that do not want to have that green thing put in their face. And why should we, why should I buy more expensive eggs because they're more humanely made, or why should I buy that product because it's got greater sustainability? I find that the majority of the population switch off because they don't want to be told. So I totally agree with you. Why is it that businesses can't make it cheaper for them and make more competitive products at the same sort of price? And that's something that I definitely don't have the answer for. But I would never ever, I'm with the underdog always, and I definitely know that the poorer communities in the world, not poorer communities, but the average community, they're bombarded with having us telling them to turn this particular way. But I think what everyone's sort of implying up here is a gentle approach that's showing them that there is great positivity in going forward, and that experiential thing. If you're in a city, it's very, very difficult for anyone to get a grasp of why protecting a particular environment is important. You haven't had that experience. I just recently finished a television series where I sat in a forest. A great privilege that I had, that I would never have had in my normal life other than for National Geographic. And I sat there with these pygmies in Cameroon, and I hadn't done that for so long. Sat and was still and listened to the environment. But that's not important to a person that's got 4 kids, that's trying to put them through school, that's working 16 hours a day, that's struggling to make ends meet. So I totally understand what you're saying there. I struggle with the whole concept of how to turn that switch on for them, and why should they? But I think that the media has a role to help them along the way, to showing them that it is beneficial to their life in the long run.
I would just add to that there's a couple of segments. I mean, there's people who shouldn't be paying a premium because why should we force them? But actually, again, 80% of the consumption is by 20% of the people. And there's a lot of people in Singapore, and even in Hong Kong, in the West, who actually can afford to pay a premium. And they pay a premium every day for things with very little value, handbags, shoes, watches. People easily walk in and pay a couple of $100,000 for a watch, which just tells the time. And I don't take the point of view that we shouldn't be looking to have both ends of the conversation. Here is an egg, which is for you, sustainable, developed at the right price because it's the way life should be. But then here's a product which is premium. It's the best thing for the planet. And you will pay a premium for that because it's in this segment, you're rich, you can afford it. And I think saving the planet should have a premium on it. It should be worth paying more for.
I think in bringing this back to business, businesses need to be able to support the media with this. You know, it's not just the media alone that can do this. Programs need sponsors. So businesses need to be able to be switched on and educated and understand that this kind of programming is necessary. And when you make it interesting and when you make it inspiring, it's like I mentioned it yesterday, you know, if you have a friend if you're happy and you have a friend who's happy, chances are one more of your friends is going to be happy as well. So if you can start to inspire this change, it can become contagious. You know, so business needs to be a part of this, holding the hand of media and being responsible and looking at the type of programming that's handed up to sponsors and making sure that it has some kind of integrity. You know, I turn down so many jobs these days because it's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Reality program, judging reality programs, excuse me, Big Brother, I'm sorry. Really. And I'll just say it outright, whatever. But, what for? Unless it's bringing somebody something meaningful and it might change somebody's life, why endorse it? So this is the role of business when it comes to media, and holding the hand and associating yourself, your company, your brand with something that actually makes a difference. And these inspiring programs and good news. You know, we look at the news today and it's so depressing. What do people have to look forward to? And that's what we have to be really careful of, because people can slump into this depression. So there's a market now for inspirational stories that get people going and then give them hope. You know, so that's my request to the business community, to just look at the sort of programming that you support.
I'm going to throw a cat amongst the pigeons here. We all nodded our heads up here when we all said, mainstream programming, if it went green and we could actually get, The Simpsons to be green and everything. I'll ask a question, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but do you think that if you got asked to go on Big Brother, which has like an incredible viewership, you couldn't get on there and give a green message and turn that green?
Okay.
I'm just being
Sure.
Side of
no,
the
okay.
coin.
Recently, there's a production that came to me, and they said, "Would you like to be involved in this production?" And I said, "Look, unless we can turn this into a platform to talk about something with some integrity, and I don't want it to be all fluff and rubbish, then I don't want to come on board." So they then said, "Sure, come on board, be one of the producers of this program, and then we will develop the content accordingly." Yes. But to do something like the program that you just mentioned and to come on board, it's actually quite difficult to do, because you could say whatever you want and they can just easily edit it out because it's not suited to their sort of following.
You're in the hands of the editors.
Yes.
Thank you, mate. I just thought it was just a nice sort of reflection of
But-
what we've been all.
But absolutely,
all,
no, because this is the thing. This is what I'm doing, essentially. It's using the platform that I've been given. I was on MTV and I was talking about green issues. MTV is not the right platform to be talking about these things. But it was from there that I had millions of viewers across Asia who were responding to that. So yes, I think there is space for it there, but not in that particular program that you mentioned, the Big Brother, yeah.
Do we have any more questions? Gentleman down the front here.
Yeah, my name is Charles. I just have a short question for Nadia and Graham. You mentioned a lot about walking the talk. What does it have to do with vegetarianism? Because I read a lot on Tree Hugger, and you in favor for that for sure. Does it really mean that being green is favoring a local, organic, healthy food eating diet and vegetarianism? Thanks.
Absolutely.
And you, Graham? Are you a vegetarian?
I'm a weekday vegetarian. And
I'm not full vegetarian, by the way. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm not 100% vegetarian. I was,
Yeah.
but due to allergies and diet restrictions, I'm not fully vegetarian. I don't cook meat. I don't handle meat. My kids do eat some meat. My youngest is vegetarian. But one of the key messages that I do speak about all of the time, because food is my passion, is changing your diet, because it's the easiest way, I feel, for an individual to adjust their carbon footprint is by eating less meat. And it's the simplest thing. The average Joe can't go out there and may not be able to buy solar, may not be able to buy an electric car, may not be able to do all of those things, but everybody eats 3 times a day. Everyone. Sometimes people eat once a day. But those meals, if they start to reduce their meat, they're reducing their carbon footprint, because meat travels. Meat has to be fed, meat has to be watered, they have got excrement, they have got methane gas coming out from them. They have to be transported in refrigeration, sometimes they fly, and then they're refrigerated once they get to your house. So meat is really, 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 really heavy. Meat and cheese are the easiest ways to reduce your carbon footprint by cutting them out.
So I have a 5-minute talk on the TED Talk on TED.com, which is about weekday vegetarianism. So, yeah, absolutely. Meat is not a very efficient way for us to get our calories. We don't actually need meat, most of us. We can live perfectly healthily. There are many super athletes who are vegetarian, and so it's absolutely possible. An easy way to reduce your footprint also uses a lot of water. So what I propose is that I think a lot of meat eaters are very opposed to being told what to do, largely, and they really like meat, and so they don't want to make that jump, or they say, oh, I will, but later, and that later never comes. So I suggest weekday vegetarianism, because it cuts down by like 70%. You can still get some meat on the weekends, which can be good for certain people for their health, and so it's a good way to get a lot of the way there. So yeah, it's an easy thing, a daily thing that you can do, and yeah, I believe very much in it.
I say flirting with being vegetarian. Just flirt with it. Flirt with the idea.
I'm going to start to wrap up, and I don't want us to lose focus about why we're sitting up here, and I'm going to ask everyone 60-second elevator pitch and I'm going to time you, about what you think a solution or a type of media application is in advancing a solution for the planet. And you can choose anything you want, but something that you feel that people here could take away and look further into in some way, shape or form. So I'm basically saying in 60 seconds, can you give us a roundup of where you think the future of the media is going and how it can affect change on the planet for good in our arena?
60 seconds.
Here we go.
It's been a very fascinating experience for me, interesting to hear models for the media which are very true and which are generic. I suppose if I had been invited to, was it Cancun last year or London next time, the discussion would be the same, very high quality, very global, very normative. But we are in Indonesia, and Indonesia is one of the 3 countries with the most risk for forest degradation, and one of the major countries for reducing the consumption of carbon. And I would love to see a parallel conference discuss how the media should behave in Indonesia and how the $1 billion from Norway and hundreds of millions from other countries could be put to use into making the media effective here. Because we're not yet at the stage where we can discuss types of programs. We're at the stage of restructuring the ownership of the media to be shifted from those who are against the programs in the environments, which are the status quo and the business who find it useful to continue their work. So I would love to go to a conference zeroed in on the problems of this big, big country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, 60 seconds.
60
so I think media can be very powerful in helping people to understand the why, so the background of things, and the how. It can help people provide them the tools to understand the various options in green so that they can choose the one that's most appropriate for them. So I think media can help understand the why and help you understand the how. So we can really help people move through from understanding to actual action, because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about talking, we're talking about action. The only way we're going to reduce our footprints is not by reading about it, it's by actually doing something. The other really valuable part about media is building these social norms. And so I think we can do a lot. So I think that's how media can be powerful.
55 seconds.
I think building on the social norms topic, the media needs to be responsible in terms of finding those people who are creating the social norms, look for the inspiring people and the inspiring stories, and make sure that those are the stories that they support and broadcast, and to be part of change, and business has to be there to support. I mean, I'm just reiterating what was mentioned earlier anyway. Yeah, and to stop just looking for that quick cash, flash, trash, for lack of better words.
Media is a business. They're motivated by revenue and money and profits. They get that primarily from advertising. Today in this room, there's advertisers from Intel, Michelin, Pepsi, GE. If they just now started focusing some of that $100 billion spent across the region in advertising and making sure they don't just buy on effectiveness, but actually start buying on quality of messaging, quality of programming, and putting that as a factor in their decisions, we could start to influence the media to drive the conversation. So take away the money, and we might have a better chance of influencing the conversation. Keep buying trash, keep supporting trash, keep sponsoring trash, and you know what we're going to get? Trash.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Just to quickly round up in my 60 seconds, there's been some fantastic views up here from very, very different areas of the media, and I remember something when I was very, very young, and it comes back down to advertising and a broad campaign that happened when I was a child, and Matt, you might remember this. Back in Australia, there was a campaign when I was young called "Don't Throw It, Stow It." And it was just this weird line that they came up with, and it was blanketed across every media source that we had in Australia. To this day, 46 years on, I cannot throw something out of my car window or my wife's car window. I can't put something on the ground. I cannot litter. That has been instilled in me from a very, very young age. And I think what the media has the ability to do now in so many different applications is blanket those really beautiful, simple messages to people and make it part of the norm, as you said. Make it part of life, that parents actually act on their children's behaviour and so on. And I just think we've got the opportunity to do that more than we've ever had. So hopefully you've picked up some inspiring information from these wonderful people here today, and I really thank you for attending this afternoon, and thanks again.